Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I am excited to bring you this episode. I have here on Zoom with me my very good friend and fellow life coach, Jewel Hohman. And Jewel and I have been in the same mastermind for, about a year and a half now that we have been there together. So it's pretty fun to I just got to see you a few weeks ago at our live event. So that was so cool. But Jewel is a friendship and connection coach. And I have invited her on the podcast for a very special Valentine's Day episode of the Dating After a Divorce podcast. Now, I know initially it sounds like, well, why would we do this? We're going to get into it. You're going to find out exactly how powerful her work is. Jewel, welcome to the podcast. Please tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Oh my gosh, so excited. I got familiar with Sade through our mastermind, and from the very beginning, I just knew that I wanted to talk to her all the time. So I'm really grateful to be here.
Absolutely.
But yeah, what I do is I help people feel more secure and connected in their friendships, specifically. So I help people make deeper friendships. Most of the time we know how to meet people. We don't know how to actually make quality friendships.
Yeah, this is such amazing work. I have been such an admirer of your work. And one of the reasons is because, friendship and connection was just such a huge part of my healing from divorce journey.
Yeah. And
we're recording this just a couple of days before Valentine's Day in 2022. And I'm all around, I notice, everyone's talking about love, how to get a date, all of those things. And I really just wanted to flip it, because those who are already in a relationship or already have a date, those aren't the people that need our help on February 14th, right? Mm-hmm. The people who need what we can bring are the people who are it's February 14th and I don't have someone, right? Yeah. I don't have someone to go out with, and that day can be really painful. I remember during my separation and divorce, I really had to reorient myself to figure out, well, what do I do with these days that are, I always had something to do on February 14th, even if it was just having a terrible argument with my ex about where we were going to go. Right?
Yeah.
Even if that was it. So I wanted to talk about friendship and connection, because for a lot of my listeners, divorce not only harms the relationship, so the primary relationship. Many of us lose friendships because people choose the ex or whatever, or the divorce is just so uncomfortable for some people that they just kind of distance themselves. So a lot of divorced men also lose friendships. They lose connection on top of everything else that's happening in the divorce. So I wanted us to just talk about let's start with someone who wakes up one morning and is like, I don't have any friends. Yeah. Right? Where do you start with that person? Now, there's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of possible situations. But if someone came to you and said, I don't have anyone to hang out with, what would you say to them? How would you help them start that journey?
Yeah, most definitely. And I have to say too, I love that you're having this conversation around Valentine's Day, because so many of us crave connections, and really plural, connections. Mm-hmm. And so to have this kind of conversation around that time, I just think is so amazing and so needed. But yes, so if somebody came to me and they said that they didn't have anybody to hang out with, well, I would know that they're an active member of society, I'm assuming, not some way or another, right? Because if they're coming to me, they're part of the social world in one way or another. They're not living in the mountain by themselves somewhere. So they do know people. They know people. They might just not be thinking of any of them as friends or even as potential friends.
Mm.
in the very beginning. So I would start with looking at who you know and who maybe have you like lost connection with. Um, I during the pandemic realized I had a connection gap myself, and I thought about two people that I really liked and it just never went anywhere with. So I
Mhm.
thought about them and started creating connection with them. So if somebody has no friends, again, they're part of the social world. There's some people that they've liked and the friendship just never went anywhere and they never really knew why. There are people that they could reconnect with. Um, there's people that they know that maybe they're just like not even considering as a
Mm.
friend, and they don't, you don't have to have everything in common with them. You don't have to be in like the exact right stage. Like connection is connection. So I encourage people to like expand, like, and like kind of look at who's in their world now, who's even on their
Mhm.
Facebook now. And
Yeah.
then another thing that they could do is I like to think of like who I want to be in the world. And I like to think of people that, um, remind me of those traits, right? And it's not
Yeah.
that, yeah. So I like to think of people in my world who remind me of that. Or even like if you want to be better at like roller skating, like there's meetups, there's so many opportunities now to meet new people as well.
Mhm. How did you know you had a connection gap during
Yeah,
that time? Like, how, I mean, during divorce, we're all like, listen, this sucks. I'm lonely,
yeah, yeah.
right? I'm a man, there's no one to talk to. But how do you identify, like, oh, I have a connection gap? How do you know when you have enough friends? Or, how do you decide the number of friends you have is, enough or the right number for you?
Yeah. Okay. So, um, statistically, like friendship research says that, um, for us to feel really fulfilled, um, and like connected, and even I like to think about it this way, like to have people to go to and feel comfortable going to them when you do start to notice yourself feel lonely. So research says that humans thrive off of having five confidants.
Mm-hmm.
And confidants are people that we identify as like people we can call when like, stuff hits the fan, right? Like
Yeah.
people we feel comfortable doing that with. Um, so that is also though that's not a one size fits all. For some people, it might be like two, um, and so on. Um, but for me, I knew I had a connection gap because I felt really connected with my partner. Um, and some of my friendships were changing and I was really missing them. And I was noticing that I was starting to feel lonely. And if I could touch on that for just a second, because so often we hear that little like pang of loneliness in our chest, and so many of us are like, oh, like we don't want to deal with it, right? Whether it's we're going through the divorce, like rebuilding after that, whether it's like, oh, we feel like we don't have friends, right?
Mhm. Or people
But
move, you
yeah, people
graduate
move.
college or you get a job and move to a new city. So many reasons why loneliness could be just a real thing that's happening in that moment.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And yet we have so much shame around it. We
Mm.
never want to be the weird one. We never want to be the unworthy one, the one that's not a part and belonging to the group. So many of us, one, have a really hard time even admitting that we're lonely. But for me,
Mm.
a lot of my friendships were changing, and I especially was able to see that during the pandemic. Like, um, my best friend became a mom, and all of a sudden,
Mm.
her son is taking up more of her time and energy. Rude, and I wasn't getting it. Um, so certain situations like that. So really it was me identifying like missing in that loneliness, I would say, is how I knew I had a connection gap.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really powerful. I think that awareness is the awareness without shame, I think, and like you put it, not just the
Exactly.
awareness. And when I think back to the early days of my separation, I did feel lonely. Like I was very aware that I felt lonely. And I think I just had a lot of shame in general over the divorce. There was just a ton of that at the time. I didn't really put it to loneliness was like not one of the first three of my problems. So I
Mhm.
didn't really attach it to the loneliness, it was more attached to a lot of the other things. But I could see where, you know, you're the last one in your friend group to get married, or the first one to get divorced, or, you know, for whatever reason, like you said, the one who seems awkward or the one who doesn't quite get what the group has, and that
Mhm.
creating some shame around loneliness. And so what I hear you saying is that just because we're lonely doesn't mean there's something wrong with us.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. Loneliness is a feeling just like any other feeling, like disappointment, anxiety, being angry. So often we think loneliness is such a big problem. Um, and if I like to tell my clients too that, so like loneliness is a feeling, right, which is caused by our thoughts. Again, going back to that person that doesn't have any friends, right? If they're thinking, I don't have any friends, I don't know anybody, right? Of course, it's going to have them feel really lonely rather than looking at who they do know. And at the same time, I also like to think of loneliness almost as like hunger. Like
Mm,
you don't have any shame around being hungry at
yeah.
all. You're like, oh, I'm hungry. I'm going to go take care of that need. We're humans. We like need connection really for our survival and our health in so many ways. So if you're feeling lonely, like what a beautiful craving to have, like that you
Mm-hmm.
want more connection in your
Mm.
life.
Yeah. Like, what would be the alternative to not want to be with
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And some people do go that route. They're like, don't need anybody.
Right. That isn't
Yeah.
necessarily better. We were built for connection. I mean, of course, everyone has different levels of need. You know, like you said, the numbers are
Right.
different for every person. But yes, that just tells us that all of our systems are working as a human being to want connection. So, and so when you noticed that you had that connection gap, like, what did you do? Like, how did you begin to, you know, and I know we talked a little bit earlier about like just reaching out to the people around us. Did you also notice that there were others who were lonely? Like, how did that become a thing for you where you were like, I need to fix this problem and here's what I'm going to do about it?
Yeah. So for me, I thought about two people that I just adored. And again, they both have traits that I, want to have more of myself. Like I wanted to be around and keep showing up as that person. So I reached out to two of these women, and you got it. One, first and foremost, like it's always going to be a little weird doing that in the beginning, and weird because like logistics, like people are
Mm,
at their job, they're not going to be like texting back right away and so on. Be willing to go through the logistical of figuring out when you're going to connect. That's fine. Be willing to do
mm.
that for the outcome that you want. So that
It
was
doesn't
honestly
mean they're
probably first
rejecting you.
thing.
It doesn't mean that they don't like you if it takes a minute or two to make the connection.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I am the worst at responding to messages. The worst. I always joke it takes me 2 to 3 business days. Um, and I love my friends so much,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just because that's not like, something that I do doesn't mean I don't care about them for sure.
Yeah.
Or I'm uninterested. Yeah. Um, but so what I noticed, oh, so yeah, after I identified like those women, and I also, am telling you about these two because these two are they're confidants in my life now, but I also reached out to a few other people. Um, I think it was about like 3 or 4 total, but anyway, um, what I did from there was I like reached out to connect with them. And again, these are people I've already liked, I already had some kind of relationship with, it just never went anywhere. So I reached out
Mm-hmm.
to connect with them. And then when I was about to end the FaceTime, because, the pandemic,
Yeah.
when I was about to end the FaceTime, I would be like, okay, let's plan like the next time that we're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk. Friendship, especially in the beginning, it doesn't need this if you've had like your best friend since first grade. Like you don't need this as much with them because you've already had so much history built in. But friendship in the beginning needs consistency on some level, it needs
Mm-hmm.
frequency. um and for me at that point in time, I was able to have like weekly chats, but it doesn't have to be weekly for everybody. I know everybody has different situations where they have kids or so on. For consistency, I really encourage people to think of like, if they drive home from church every Sunday and it's like a 30-minute drive, like just plan to call a friend during that time. Like plan it into your schedule, and again, like plan it, like it doesn't matter if it's weekly, bi-weekly, and so on. But anyway, so I created some consistency with these people, and just to see where it went. I was committed to having more connection, but I wasn't as attached. I know we talk about that a lot in our mastermind.
Yeah.
But I wasn't attached on who it was. So, like I said, it ended up being these two girls that I'm really, really close with now. But yeah, that was the first thing I did, was start to create more consistency with them. And you said at one point, did you think about like other people you thought might be lonely? No, actually, I didn't at all. I actually had one thought about one of the girls that I'm really close with now. I was like, oh my gosh, she already has so many friends. She's not going to need me. And I want to offer for everybody, you are never bothering somebody by offering them connection. Connection benefits them too. And if they feel like they're at capacity, they, will maybe say, oh, that's not like doable for me right now, and it doesn't mean anything about you, like we talked about earlier. But I'm starting to lose my train of thought. It was so good.
It was so good. No, it's so fun. You were talking about how you're not bothering anyone.
Yes.
If you're reaching out for connection, like, because you had thought, oh, she has a lot of friends and she's not going to want to connect with me. Kind of like the flip side of what, I was thinking was like, well, should I reach out to other people who are also lonely? But it sounds like it doesn't matter who, like, just reach out to people that you like, and those who are able to will reach back out.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes. And I like to think about it too. This is, thank you so much. I remember my thought is that you want to leave it up to them. I'm so glad I let them decide, because, the girl that I thought had so many friends, again, we're so close now. I provide so much like connection and value to her life now. And if I would have decided for her, I wouldn't have been able to give her the gift of my friendship too.
Right. And I think that's like, it's like having that self-concept that I do have friendship to offer. I mean, a lot of this parallels dating as well. It's like, if you come into the relationship thinking I don't have anything to offer, it really makes for things being very unbalanced and unhealthy. But if you're like, oh, no, I'm a catch as a friend, and I'm just looking for someone who's a match for me, then it's almost like you said, it's a gift to the other person and a gift to yourself to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember during my like sort of rebuilding community, rebuilding friendships period of my divorce. I was a part of a support, like a not divorce support group. It was I guess it was a support group, but not specific for divorce. But those of us who were divorced in the group ended up just kind of banding together, and they ended up being about 6 to 8 of us that would get together in different combinations. So there were a few people who were like really close to each other as like pairs. And then sometimes we would get together as like 6 of us or 8 of us, and we'd have a girls' night out. And over those years, February 14th became like Valentine's Day. I had heard that on, what was it, Parks and Recreation? The show, and Leslie created Valentine's Day. At least I think that's where it originated. That's where I first heard about it. And so we started going out on Valentine's Day as girlfriends. Like, we would all like get up and go. And it just, honestly, it was better than any Valentine's Day celebration that I had. My whole marriage, all those Valentine's days were just so much more fun. And I bring that up to just say, friendship can be as fulfilling as a romantic relationship in a weird kind of way.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you speak to what connection is that just like is is connection like across the board? Like, what is connection? What is that quality that makes it? Because I don't really quite have an answer for that. When I go to lunch with my best friend now, I'm just like, my husband better get out of the way, and everyone make sure nothing is in my way as I go to spend like 3 hours with her, having breakfast. What is it about connection that just makes it so good no matter who you have it with? Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates, so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to shadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful question. So to answer the first one, I think connection and friendships and relationships are so similar because there is the connection piece. Like if you think about it, the dating process, I mentioned like consistency for a new friendship. You're getting a lot of consistency when you first start really like seeing somebody. You're like making plans to see them every week if you can, right? Like you're getting a lot of consistency. The process is pretty much identical for friendship and romantic relationships as far as like how it goes, whether we realize it or not. It's just that it's like a different venue almost. That's all.
Yeah.
The same concert, different venue. But what makes connection feel so awesome, I think, is because, well, first and foremost, we are wired to like really feel like we belong, even from when we're babies, right? Not to make everybody sad, I'm so sorry, but there's this study that I learned about in college. Well, it wasn't a study, it was an unfortunate incident where a bunch of babies at an orphanage, they were getting fed, they were getting changed, like everything was good, and yet a lot of the babies died because even though people were taking care of the babies with like feeding them, bathing them, cleaning them, a lot of the babies died because they didn't feel connected or nurtured. So that is how fundamental of a need connection is. And you can see it in a lot of the things we do. Like there's a TikTok trend my roommate was telling me about where it was like that girl morning routine. I don't know. But it was like, oh, I'm going to, drink a green smoothie and work out and have a amazing, perfect morning routine so that I think I belong and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Right. I really want that promotion so that I can think that I'm worthy. Like a lot of our desires are related to how we fit into our social world. So I think when you go and you meet up with your bestie, you've already had so much consistency with her. You guys have already had so many like meaningful moments. I'm assuming, some history, some vulnerability. So you get there and of course, your brain's just going to be so lit up.
Yeah. Like she and I have been friends now. I think it's close, almost 20 years. So we actually,
wow.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. I was about to say, we were both adults when we met. And I'm like, dang it, I'm so old now. Because if it's 20 years since I met her. Yeah. So we've been friends almost 20 years. Like we've been through her my first marriage and my children, her first marriage, I was already married and had kids, and then she got married, had kids. Our kids are about 15 years apart, which is interesting. And actually wanted to bring that up because even though our lives are so different, like I have kids
Yeah.
in college and she has kids in kindergarten and first grade, it really hasn't changed our friendship that much. It's changed how often we've been able to get together, right?
Yeah.
But it hasn't changed the quality of the friendship. And I think it's just sustaining it over time has just been, and the fact that I inherited her in the divorce allowed me to continue to build that friendship, over time. So could you speak to, like, sometimes we look for similarities? How important is it to be similar to the person that you have a friendship with? Because I mean, she and I are similar in many ways, but we're also really different.
Yeah, it's really not important. Like almost not at all. I will say sometimes we have a craving for a specific kind of connection. Kind of like when you said earlier you were going to a support group and a bunch of the women there who are also divorced, y'all were like, all right, like we have something to talk about here. Like I want to talk to somebody who relates to what I'm currently going through, which is why support groups are so amazing. For caregivers of, like maybe like disabled children and so on. It's because you have somebody to talk to who gets your experience. It's also why I think our mastermind is so great because we're all doing business together. Yeah. So sometimes we can have a specific craving for a commonality, for sure. But in terms of commonalities being like a necessity in any friendship, it really doesn't matter. You could have so much in common with somebody and be in a room with them, but if you don't feel safe or seen or have fun or understood by them in any way, it doesn't matter. Whereas, like, you and your best friend, if you get together for your brunch and she's talking about her kids, it's not that you like tune that out or anything because you can't relate. You're like all in it with her. You're like asking about their field trips and what like funny thing her little one said, right? Like, yeah, which is still a feel good moment for you and for her.
Right.
So
what I've I guess learned in the parenting journey is there's something called like mirror neurons, where in order for your child to develop in a really healthy way, when they do something, they need a response back from the adult who's looking at them. And I remember when my kids were really little, like they'd make a face, I'd make the face, or I'd make a face, and then they'd try to make the face back. And it was just such a bonding moment. And what you described feels like we need that like throughout our lives. Like when my friend is talking about her kids who are little, what creates the connection with us is the fact that I'm mirroring back to her validation of what she's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why, too, I think, and there's other reasons as well, but if you see your husband and he's like sad, you might automatically just have more of like that like facial expression on your face as you're talking to him, right? Like those mirror neurons, definitely.
Yeah. And I wanted to also highlight, and I want you to speak to like sort of creating a community where, and I don't want to like say, oh, you overwhelm one person, like feeling like you're overwhelming one person with everything, like sort of creating like a patchwork of people who are able to validate you in the different areas of your life. Like you said, in our mastermind, we're all running businesses. So when we do hang out or we meet each other or we meet as peers or have connect calls, I can offload my numbers and my profits and all the things. Whereas with another person in my life, I might talk about something completely different. Is there I don't want to say a strategy, but should people be planning to have people who match different areas of their lives if they notice that one person doesn't fit in a particular area where they want mirrored back to them?
Yeah, then I would say definitely, absolutely. For me, having somebody who I could talk to about business with when I first started my business was really important and really helpful. Because what happens, and again, going back to your other question of why connection's so amazing, is you have moments where you're like, oh, they totally get it. And you have moments
Mm-hmm.
where you're also inspired by their ideas, by their ways of thinking about things. There's so many amazing things in having a commonality with somebody, for sure. So I think if somebody is wanting that, specifically, and if someone's like listening to this, they know, right? They kind of know, like,
Yeah.
ah, I want to talk to someone about this. Then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely. I don't think I think that planning has to be as you go a little bit though, because
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, like now, so now I wanted friends to talk to about business with, but I traveled for a long time. And at one point in time, I wanted people that also got that, that also understood what it was like to do that. And that also had other strategies of calming their parents, of being like,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not going to die out there.
Yeah.
Things like that. So I think planning for that can be something that you feel as you go. However, I also want to challenge everybody to try to talk to their current connections about the things they want to talk about. Like, your
Mm-hmm.
friends care about you. They want to know about your world, like just like how you want to know about theirs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I don't know if your partner owns a business or not, but mine certainly doesn't.
Mine doesn't
Um,
either.
yeah, mine is a PhD student. I want to know all about that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not ever going to get a PhD.
Yeah.
He's probably not ever going to start his own business, right? And I still want to know all about that. And it's the same thing with your friends as well. Your friends want to know, so give them a chance.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Not to just assume that they didn't want to be involved or they didn't want to be a part of a world that maybe they're not a part of. That's a really good point. And I think that actually overlaps with dating, where I've often talked to some of my clients about showing up with everything that they are on a
Yeah.
date, and not necessarily like TMI or like telling someone really sensitive parts of your life, but like if these are your interests and they were on your profile or whatever, feel free to bring up your interests at a date. you know,
Yeah.
a lot of my clients sometimes will not want they want to show up for the other person on a date, and they want to be good listeners and they want to make space for the other person, but they don't always come prepared to show who they really are, whether or not that person responds positively to,
Yeah.
I have a client who watches like foreign soap operas, just basically like, the fluffiest of the fluff. She watches a lot of them.
Mhm.
And she was going on dates, and I talked to her, well, what do you talk about? And she mentioned things, and I was like, but this is a much bigger part of who you are. Why have you not mentioned to him that you still watch cartoons even though you're, a grown woman? And she was like, well, I don't want him to look down on me. I don't want him to think I'm an airhead. And I was like, but you do watch these shows and it doesn't make you an airhead. And at some point, if this goes forward, he's going to find out. And you want someone who accepts you for 100% of who you are. So you make a really good point about like, don't hide parts of yourself from people you're connected with.
Yeah, I love that so much because I often tell my people, um, because so I can get like undersharers where they don't want to share anything about themselves, or I get overshares. So, and there's
Mm-hmm.
reasons why both people want to feel connected and safe. And so even if you're oversharing, you're just trying to force that, and if you're
Mm-hmm.
undersharing, you're just trying to hide almost.
Or
But anyways,
control how the person connects with you by not giving them too much.
yeah, like filtering your image, which is kind of what you just described too. Um, But what I tell both of them, like one thing that's like super helpful to do is to think about one thing that has happened recently, especially like if you see, I don't know how often you see your bestie, but um, next time you get brunch with her, like one thing that's like happened that you really want to share with her, and then one thing you're really curious about. Because what
Mm-hmm.
that does is it allows you to know them, which is so satisfying, and for you to share what you want to share, which is so satisfying as well.
Yeah, being seen is so satisfying. I think, like you said, that's what we're all craving. That's why a lot of us are doing the things that we do.
Yeah.
so that people will see us. So just sort of start wrapping up. I wanted to just bringing it back to someone who is, looking to build community in a new place or in a new situation in life, creating friendships, networking, creating community if they've lost community. Like, what would be your best advice for someone who's like, oh, this sounds like a lot. It sounds like I have to do all this work. And half the time, especially if you're divorced, you're like, it's unfair. Many of us are still in the throes of, it's unfair that I have to do this. I had a whole life. And then this person did something and, kind of a bomb went off in the middle of my life. What advice would you, like to give to someone who's like, okay, this is a whole new journey that I need to go on?
Yeah. So if they are feeling really heavy about it, kind of like how you described, right? Like, oh, this sounds like a lot. I don't even know where to begin. I really do think my best advice would be, because there's two things, because sometimes we have a tendency to isolate when we're feeling lonely, and I did both. I have a tendency to try to compensate for that and talk to as many people as I could and overbook myself and then drain my social battery completely. So what I would encourage that person who really wants to start, rebuilding their community is I would want them to think about whether that be one day, one night where they can just start with right now, where they're going to go and they're going to connect. And just like anything else, right? Like your people, if they're going to go through, some crappy dates, right? If that's going to happen, they're willing to go through some crappy dates to get what they wanted, right? To get this second relationship, this second marriage, right? Yeah. So just like that, be willing to put a little bit of energy, a little bit of effort, a little bit of discomfort, because the return on that investment, just like how we talked about connection feels so amazing, that's going to give you so much more energy. And with so much more energy, you're going to have, honestly, more time, because you have more energy to do things and so on. So, the very first thing, be really committed to the outcome and make it feasible on you. Pick one day, or you can do what I did, and I picked 4 people because that seemed manageable at the time. And again, 2 of them became my confidants, right? Yeah. So I would be really clear on that as well.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that advice. And, we're putting this out just before Valentine's Day. This is a really good time to practice this. Like, if you don't have a date for Valentine's Day, you could ask someone out. So that's that's the easiest. But otherwise, you could create all sorts of connection. Yeah. You could create connection with another woman that's in your area that they're like, oh, I'd love to have brunch with her. So we could have Valentine's Day brunch or Galentine's Day brunch, or even with a young person. My husband and I have a couple of young people in the area that we take to lunch every once in a while. It's so satisfying for us to have a young person who wants to talk to us, because sometimes our kids are like, oh yeah, do I have parents? And that happens. And that's totally normal when kids are in college. And so it's very satisfying for us to, reach out and, hey, do you want to go to lunch, or do you want to go to dinner? Or I'm getting ready to do some art with my mother-in-law, and I'm not an artist at all, but she is. And I'm like, I don't know, you can teach me to color or something. Why don't we just something simple that can really start to add substance to that connection.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Bucket. Yeah. And it's, I at this stage in my life, I now understand just the healing power of any kind of relationship that you have, not just the romantic relationship. When I was single, I could literally feel myself getting better when I went out with my girlfriends, or when I talked to an old high school friend who lived in Europe, and he, reached out. He was married and all that. It wasn't romantic at all, but we would just talk on the phone. It was completely platonic. And he was just there, just someone that I could talk to. And so all of these relationships were completely platonic, but so completely healing, and have had such a powerful quality of love that even as I did go on to date and get married again, I've really tried to hold on to that connection. And it's one of the things, like I said, I really admire about your work, because I think sometimes we over focus as a society on that romantic relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we do.
And then we try to put everything on our partner. Like, you need to be
Yes.
everything.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that you said that. I just wrote a post the other day that was like, look at how cute my partner is. And he still can't fulfill all of my connection
Right.
needs. He just can't.
He can't. He can't. So friendship and connection is so, so important. We want to wish everyone listening a really happy Valentine's Day 2022, or Galentine's Day 2022, or whatever spin you want to put on it this year. And just encourage you to reach out for friendship and connection wherever it is available to you. And if this is something you want to create more in your life, reach out to Jewel. All of her information is going to be in the show notes. It's such an important thing, whether or not you're dating or not dating yet, or already remarried. This is something that you definitely want to. It's a skill that I think really serves us for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me to talk about my favorite thing in the world with one of my favorite people.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you,
fun.
Jewel. You are such an amazing friend. And I was going to say you're such a jewel. It's like so corny, but yes, you're such a bright light to our mastermind and in the coaching world. Please remind all of the listeners where they can find you. Spell out a couple of your social media handles or your website. We'll link it all up in the show notes. I want to encourage everyone to reach out to Jewel if you really want to work on connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very active on Instagram. So at jewel.hohman, so JEWEL.HOHMAN. And my website is also jewelhohman.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your expertise with the Dating After Divorce podcast. I really appreciate it. I know the listeners have just gotten a lot out of this today. And for everyone listening, thank you for your time and attention today. And we will see you next time. Thank you, Jewel.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.